more like a conversation and question and answer. It's not one way, so don't be shy.
Away we go?
Yeah.
Are you saying something? Or?
I'm just going to say good morning and welcome to the Exchange series, where students are interviewing and exchanging ideas with artists and curators here at the MCA. I'd especially like to welcome Plumpton High School, the Year 11 art class, and anyone who might be joining us online. And a big thank you to Anne Loxley, Senior Curator at the MCA, who's done a lot of amazing work with the C3 West project in Western Sydney. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, whose land and waters the MCA is situated on, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. So this year Exchange series is about a conversation and students asking questions to the curator. So I'd like to introduce Anne and also hear from you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Cara. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to these exciting young people. I am a curator. It's a curious thing that happened that I ended up a curator. When I was your age, I was just crazy about art, and that's all I knew. And so I've just always followed my insane love of art, and it's ended up that I have this great job working as a curator with artists and artworks. And so I really want you fellas to talk to me. Sometimes I get scared of being interrupted, but I've hung around with you for an hour. You seem very nice, and I'm very happy for us to have a conversation, so please. The most important thing for me is that we actually have a kind of connection. But if it's getting boring or I don't make any sense, that would break my heart. So please, talk. What I'm trying to do is set my alarm for 15 minutes because I want to talk for 15 minutes in an introductory sense about things. And I would like to start by asking you what you think an artist is.
An artist is the person who tries to communicate their feeling towards the audience by creating artworks which who they are.
Exactly. A communicator, a person who communicates visually. That's a really bloody brilliant start. Okay, so I think from such a sophisticated beginning, we don't need to keep talking about artists, but do you know what a curator does? No? Well, yeah.
An organiser.
An organiser, that's a very good start. Yep, a lot of my time is spent in front of a computer. Right now I've been organising solar bud lights and a shade house structure for the artist Carla Dickens. She's going to put solar bud lights on a kind of frame of a house, or it'll look like a frame of a house, and it's going to be back out there at the Blacktown Native Institute site, sitting on the footprint of the old original building where those little Aboriginal and Pacific Islander kids went to school in the 1820s. And so that artist's idea is those lights, which of course will glow in the night, that is an expression, as Cara might say, a metaphor for the stars that those children would have seen when they looked up at the sky. So actually I was barreling it. It's actually very hard to get the right kind of solar lights. She thought we could get curtains, but we can't. Curtains of little bud lights. So we're probably going to have to cable tie together little nets of 2 metres by 1 metre, and at the moment we can't find them. They used to be sold in Kmart, and there's a person who's selling old Kmart stuff on eBay, and we're a bit frightened to buy eBay stuff in case it doesn't work. Anyway, I was going to get myself a cup of tea yesterday and I thought, now this is the life. Getting solar bud lights for a shade structure to make a metaphor for the stars in the sky for the children of the 1820s at the Blacktown Native Institute. And I thought, yeah, I am a very particular person. This would not float everybody's boat, but it gets me really excited. And so, yeah, we do organising. Any other ideas that you people have about what a curator is? I'm not surprised if you look askance and you don't know, because I definitely had no idea. The way I see it, you guys are dead lucky. You've just seen a world-class exhibition. It was dazzling. Like you couldn't hide your enjoyment. That was exciting to me. At your age, I was stuck in the country dreaming of a day like this, and I definitely had never met a curator. I would have had no idea what a curator is. So when I was talking with Cara about how you would explain it, because a lot of grown-ups don't know what a curator is either. A lot of people think I'm an artist, and if they know that I'm not an artist, then they think that I spend all my time, you know, pointing to where the work might go in a gallery. Oh yes, put that light tower there, put it there, and you know, that's the whole job. Anyway, you do a bit of that, and we do that placing of work very, very carefully. But if I were to try and describe the curator role, I was saying to Cara, I think it's a bit like what the editor's relationship to a writer. You know, you get a fantastic piece of work. I'm sure sometimes the teachers edit your pieces of writing, correcting a bit of punctuation, helping with a bit of spelling, going, that bit is really amazing. Maybe you don't need that last paragraph, maybe you need an introduction. And professional writers do that as well. They have editors. So we do a bit of that. Like sometimes you talk to an artist and maybe sometimes you say, that doesn't really feel like, I'm having actually to do that right now with an artist. There's a big commission and he's up for it in competition. I'm saying, I don't think that one will win the commission. That's very, have that relationship with an artist is a great privilege, and I'm very nervous when I speak like that with artists because they're the creative people. But they like to have a sounding board, someone who's madly passionate and informed about art, as I am. So because of my expertise, I can help artists sometimes finesse their work. Sometimes you'll see in an installation, for example, a curator might say, well, you've got all that, you don't actually need that extra bit. It's the same as the writing. Also, people who write playwrights, their work is often finessed by a profession called dramaturgs. Same sort of thing. You've got some brilliant words going there, but you know those lines are a bit hard to say. So it's this kind of finessing role, and for me it's such a privilege because it's a very close relationship that you have with the artists. And of course, sometimes we work with dead artists, and then it's a different type of close relationship. You have to research the work, know what know your field if you're going to, work with any particular artist. There's also something worth mentioning about the conductor's role to an orchestra. So, in my work as curator, I've talked about working with artists in the making of work, finessing installations. Also, just as you saw that brilliant exhibition then, a curator or curators put it all together. They thought, what a nice idea. Just as Cara explained, light is such an interesting medium and such a relatively new medium from the 20th century and into our present time. And as she said very wisely, I thought, it doesn't come, light as a medium for artists, doesn't come with all the baggage of, say, sculpture. People have been making bronzes and working in stone, since antiquity. Light is a very, very different medium. So some curators gone, the light went on, sorry, that's a terrible pun. What a great idea to work with light. It is such a relevant medium. And then that was an international show. If we were so busy looking at the work, I don't know how much you absorbed of where those artists came from. I don't think there's any Australians in the show, and there could be. There are some very fine artists working with light in our country. but there was artists from all over Europe, from the States, from the United Kingdom. And so the act of selecting that show, the act of researching that show, and then there'll be a big catalogue. Curators have to be able to talk about work, educators talk about work, and that is a different profession. I always say to Georgia and Cara, I'm not an educator, I'm a curator. I get very anxious actually about that role. But we do have to talk, and we have to talk from a position of being informed. So it's actually a very kind of scholarly position, a scholarly role. In fact, I used to say, and I'm sure you remember when you were younger, I hope you still have them, those workbooks where you'd do an assignment and one side of the page had lines for the writing and one side of the book had the picture side. And I often feel my work is like that. Research, writing, talking, that's the page with the lines, and then the pictures is of course the art, the wonderful art. So then I have to try and talk about this program that I'm the curator of called C3 West. And it's a very unusual program, even in the world of curatorial practice. It's not my invention. I just have the privilege of working on it. And it's a very specialised way that we all work. The way that the artists work on our program is specialised, the way that the curator works is specialised, and then we work with community. And in fact, in the work that you've been doing with Cara in the camps is kind of a student version of what we do with the broader community with the C3 West projects. So we work with community in a specific way, and the commerce stands for non-arts business. So what we do in a nutshell is we make partnerships with businesses to work on issues that are in the world that we know artists can positively impact, and working on those issues with specific communities. Now, going back to your really good description of an artist about expression, artists and expression, I have found over these years that artists also are amazing. They're incredibly observant, and their research skills are unique to they've got their own weird way of seeing things. I think it's because art is about being original, so they're not afraid to think their own thoughts. So we find them very useful in these real world situations because they're not trying to just say something that they think should be said. They believe in their own thinking. And so we have found that working on real world problems with artists and communities, most of our work is in Western Sydney. We've found that we're getting some really great results. And I'm going to show you some pictures soon. I just really wanted to spend some time on establishing or trying to unpack the framework. And so I say this is an unusual program, and it is. Two programs that are a bit similar to C3 West, where we're asking artists literally to work strategically. And because to some people that's a contradiction. Artists, they're original, as I say, they think outside the box. It's all about their imagination. How weird, and how could you possibly ask an artist to do a specific job and that be a good idea? It's paradoxical, but it can be done if it's done very carefully. Dare I say it, with a fairly sophisticated curatorial approach. There's a wonderful organisation in the United Kingdom called the Wellcome Trust, and it's this fantastic organisation where artists work with medical science, and they go to they do all stuff with the science people of medical science. They work with the patients. You can imagine how some of that art was making me feel sick but some of that art was making me feel really good. And you can imagine that you could make art and art projects that could really contribute to people's health, and there is a lot of data to tell you that that's actually true. Art can make people feel better. So there's the Wellcome Trust. There's also there's a wonderful program actually, an artist in schools residency program that started in Scotland called Room 13. And there's a parent at my kid's school, Howard, who's been emulating the Room 13 program in Arncliffe. And it's really, so he's in residence and he works with the kids, and the kids come maybe once a week. Well, guess what? I'm sure you know this. You know, some people are good at math, some people are good at writing, some people have, you know, dyslexia, and then they might be amazing piano players. Everybody has different skills and capacities, and you can, you know, you can shine in something and really not shine in something else. And sometimes you just need something unlocked for yourself. Maybe it's a personal thing, or maybe it's an intellectual thing. You know, anyway, what they're finding with Howard in residence at Athelstane Primary School, which is just an ordinary primary school in Arncliffe, is all these kids that had particular different learning disabilities and stuff, maybe English, maybe just even personal, like feeling a bit aggressive or whatever. They have shone in this art residency that Howard's been in that school for 3 years. And not only have they made amazing art, but they have really people. You know, for me, art is the safest. You know, you can tell I'm an art tragedy, but for me, galleries are always the safest places. So it doesn't surprise me at all that art can unlock things. But more interestingly, down the road in Hurstville, there's a really tough school for kids with really significant disabilities, you know, pretty hardcore autism on the scale of that spectrum and stuff. And there, again, through this really well thought out program, he listens to the kids long enough to know what they're interested in. And they ended up making this gigantic collage of a rocket because some kid was really mad about space travel. And then they all made their own amazing, crazy space outfits. And just this whole elaborate thing developed from this fact that this kid who really doesn't talk likes to talk about rockets. So they're just two examples of how art can be used effectively and strategically. And now I'm going to show you some art that we've done with C3 West. And please feel free to talk. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Lara Toms project, Ultimate Vision Monuments to Us. And we did this in Hurstville. And this was really interesting, this project. It was about young people like you, people in the age bracket of 12 to 19. And our business partner was Hurstville Council, and actually Westfield. And what the problem was for Hurstville was that the young people in Hurstville felt like they didn't have their own space. They didn't have, you know, they didn't have a place where they could say what was important to them, and definitely they didn't feel like they were being listened to. And they felt a bit, what's a better word for alienation? What does that mean? What does alienation mean? Does anyone know? I can't think of a, I suppose you feel, yeah, well, you feel a bit like an alien. Feel a bit, you know.
Odd.
Yeah, odd, weird. Anyway, so
Left out.
God bless Hurstville. They cared enough about their young people to make an art project about it. So Lara was given the job of working with young people in Hurstville so that they could articulate things that were important to them. The other thing, back to like talking about expression, and one of the things that we really value in our program is the artist process. And I sort of alluded to that when I'm saying they're such good thinkers, they're amazing researchers, and just this idea of expression. So sometimes our projects don't don't look like what you might think art could or should look like. So Lara came up with this idea. That's the centre court. Everyone knows Westfield. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time in shopping centres. Everybody does these days. So that's the centre court of the Westfield in Hurstville. So she's built this room. It's the hub of democracy. Those things on the walls are voting boxes. And so her idea was to get a bunch of categories and get only people between the age of 12 and 19 were allowed in there. I always felt really old stepping inside, and I tried not to do it very often. And people were able to asked to vote on their favourite person, music, food, drink, colour, time, something else. Anyway, it wasn't like voting for the government. It was like voting for The Voice or the X Factor. Like you could vote you could vote once an hour. So her point was her rationale was she'd set this hub of democracy up for 3 weeks in the Westfield. There you go. Thomas Kim won best person, and Thomas Kim is a local boy from Hurstville. And the reason why they said, the girls, his big fans, the reason why he was the best person is because he had nice calves. So it's a funny old world, isn't it? And it was so empowering to me. I just thought there was going to be someone, from TV or the movies or music world, but no, it was a local. But maybe that's the impact these days of reality TV on the way we see ourselves too, I don't know. It's great anyway. So she sat there in this hub of democracy for 3 weeks, but it is a Westfield that, like, I'm sure you've seen stuff like this in your local mall, and that is one of the great challenges of the way that C3 West works. It's not the beautiful white walls of the big contemporary art museum that you've just experienced. It is the real world, and yeah, people were patting those little animals while the kids were in voting on all those categories. So her idea was always like get the data from the best categories and then use that to make a series of installations in the Westfield. And importantly to Lara, she's very one of the smartest artists working in Australia, and she's also very radical. And so she was thinking, shopping, commercialism, ooh. And the irony of being in the Westfield was that if you were standing in that shopping centre and you were together and you weren't shopping, you'd be asked by security to move along. So Lara's going, geez, this is a funny job. I'm doing a job for the Westfield, but these young people can't stand around and not shop if they're in groups of more than 3. I'm going to think about marketing and the whole commercial structure. So she did all this research into the way shopping centres work, because they try and hide clocks in the shopping centre so that you don't, when you've spent $5 million in Sports Girl and Target, you haven't realised how much money you've spent, and you'll stay for longer and go spend another $5 million somewhere else. And they use smell to manipulate you as well. There's none of this kind of purist stuff that Cara was talking about. What does this make you feel like? There they are deliberately using, buy the bread, you can smell the bread. I think it's even more subversive than that. And music as well. Do you know in those Westfields, it's all that music's controlled by head office. So she was looking at all the things that the retailers use to sell stuff, but she used it to express stuff that was interesting and important to those young people that voted in the hub of democracy. So this was this marvellous results ceremony that we had, and this is a demonstration of the ultimate music form. Can you guess what it is? Hip hop's very close. Rap. And it was so rap won music, and what was really interesting, and again as an organiser, as a curator, we had an interesting snag with this project because in Lara's plan, she was always going to put the winning music in the speakers in the shopping centre, but the retailers would not allow it. They hate rap. So that, in fact, that was one of the few moments where I saw Lara look a bit fragile. And so you get used to plan B. In my job, you have to think about plan B, plan C, plan D, and always maintain your standards. So I'll explain this monument in a minute, but you can see those headphones. So she put the rap in the headphones of this sculpture, and that's how we all listened to rap, right? So this is now to the April phase where she's got all her installations in the shopping centre, and this thing is called Central Monument, and it is a monument to a whole bunch of the ultimate or the categories that won the different things. Blue was the favourite colour, was the ultimate colour. As I said, rap was the music. It emitted strawberry scent, really disgusting. I think that's a strawberry scent emitter, and it distributed the ultimate water. Somehow I found it very heartening that people between 12 and 19 thought water was the best drink. Yes, rap, water, blue, and strawberry. Yeah, so that's the monument down in that centre court. And we've got shops to dominate their displays with the ultimate colour, blue. And that was another job the curators did. That was actually one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. Going into, that's Target, where they had like, national companies like Target and little, the $2 shops, and you're saying, look, we're working with this artist, and we're working with Hurstville Council. It was very hard to explain. Well, would you mind dominating your window with the colour blue? Anyway, we got, and also the ultimate time, which turned out to be midnight. That's not so surprising. So we got 13 participating retailers, and this is, so you've all eaten in the food court. I'm sure that's the little advertising slot in the table in the food court. But here, they were filled with lookalikes of that guy Thomas Kim. Interestingly, they didn't focus on his calves, but that's how Thomas Kim likes to dress. He likes to wear a white polo shirt. He's got a rat's tail, and he wears a little diamond stud and horn-rimmed glasses. And one of the other categories was word, and right now the favourite word escapes me, but two of the most highest voting words were doppelganger and biter. Do you know those words? Do you know what a biter is? There you go. It changes so fast, language.
Must be local to Hurstville.
I just think all that stuff changes so fast. But anyway, it's a 1980. I don't know when it started being used, but there were parents who were saying, "Oh yeah, we used to say it in the 80s." It's about copying. So we did so these are Thomas Kim biters in the food court. I love that because you know what that is. That's a lift, and normally you see some horror show blonde advertising Country Road, and instead here we have Thomas Kim in the form of a copyist, and she made a film. So she made a film. It was this idea of monuments to this moment in the lives of 12 to 19-year-olds who went to her hub of democracy. So she made this beautiful film about Thomas Kim being followed by copyists through the Westfield, and it's one of the most get yourself lost shopping malls you'll ever find. We all got lost all the time. So here is a bunch of copyists in the car park. We were so proud. We got this film displayed in Maya and also Dick Smith, and we had the premiere in the Greater Union in Hurstville. That's the night when Renee was taking people on a tour of the Hurstville, because it was like a weird coded experience. You know, it was a functioning shopping centre, but there was also this whole other rather sneaky layer going on, which was all about, you know, the kids, 12 to 19-year-olds. Okay, so, and then we had a question and answer session in the cinema as part of the project, and it was really interesting. One of the people in the audience was an art teacher, and she was asking the kids who'd participated in this project with Lara questions. She asked this girl at the front, Renee, do you study art? She said, no. She said, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about art? She said, well, I always thought art was painting and drawing and sculpture and stuff. But Lara taught me art is about the way you see things. And I think that's a very powerful truth. How are we going for time?
Do you guys have any questions about art? Like the kind of art that might be installed in a mall or different forms? Or working with artists?
Did it take a lot of convincing to have that exhibition or that project in the Westfields?
No. No, we have all our projects are limited competitions. We research who might be best, you know, to work, you know, with youth. The Westfield, we put in, it's a co-investment program, so we all put in like equal amounts of money. And so Hurstville the council wanted to do all that stuff that I said, work with the youth and articulate their issues. The Westfield wanted the local people to see that they were doing something for the local community. So they wanted two components of the project to be on display in the Westfield. And then, as you see, Lara chose to put the whole thing in there. Fully research. So we have a list of artists that we know would like the gig, and then they all develop proposals. We pay them a bit of money to do that, and then we have a selection committee that has representatives from, you know, from the Westfield and from the council and from us. And no, like they didn't. That hub of democracy was supposed to be in an empty shop, and they didn't give us an empty shop. And sometimes when we were being, you know, when I was being a high-minded curator insisting on, you know, high levels of quality, they thought that we were slightly insane. And just like the rap, they wouldn't let us have the rap. But it was all very polite, and everybody felt that they got something that they really wanted. Yeah, but there were some things they just wouldn't do, like the rap.
How long did it take to do all this? Like, how long?
From we started talking with Westfield Hurstville and the council before 1 November. Then because we have contracts, it is rather business like our project. So we keep talking till we know that what we all want and it's all reasonable, because some stuff's not reasonable. It's got to work for everybody. Then we have a contract, and then we make artist briefs, and then, as I say, we have that competition process. So from the beginning to the end, from when we first started talking to the business to when the art program was up, it was like 18 months. But for Lara getting the job, it was only about 9 or 10 months, and she definitely thought it was too short. But the poor girl's father died in the meantime as well. But she definitely, because we'd do things like when we were making the film shoot, you know, you get permission from all the top people, but it doesn't mean that the security isn't going to give you a hard time. So like one film night shoot we couldn't do it because security got too tough and stuff. That's a short time for a project like this. So we'll go into. I just wanted to spend that time. Hopefully I'll talk faster for this one. So this is our project in Aids. Anyone know Aids? It's not that far. It's on the other end of Western Sydney. It's in the Campbelltown local government area. And in Aids, there's some trouble with these dumped cars, for example. Anyone know how those cars might have ended up like that next to the bush? Beg your pardon? Ever heard of the phenomenon of stealing a car, driving it to the bush, leaving the key in the ignition, putting a brick on the accelerator, before you light it, then you put the brick on the accelerator, turn the brake off, and then, brilliant fun for some people, the burning car goes over the cliff and ends up here in the bush. And unfortunately for this beautiful environment, it goes into this beautiful river. So it doesn't only happen in Ayers, it happens in heaps of places. But here this river's very sick. So we worked with Campbelltown Council and the community of Ayers to raise awareness. It's about like thinking and expression. Raise awareness in the community that there is a link between that behaviour, you know, that, and also dumping. If you dump the rubbish out the front of your house, or if you litter on the ground, that stuff goes into the stormwater and it makes the river sick. And it's a really beautiful river that people can't swim in. So this time we worked with Michael Tuffrey, who's an islander, Pacific Islander background. He's from New Zealand, and in Ayers it's a big Aboriginal community and it's a big Islander community. So it was a very good thing to have and there's some friction there too. So it was very good to have an Islander there who cared about the friction, because he had a cultural way in. So when Michael Tuffrey made his pitch to us for this job, he said, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I've got no idea what I could do here. I've got to go talk to people. Like it was a pretty serious ask, as you know. So he went and lived in the community for 3 weeks, and then he came up with this idea, because he found out that various organisations, it's near an army base, the Army and the Army Reserve, and other organisations over the years had pulled out those cars out of the river. Unfortunately, I don't have an image of the cars in the river, but there are plenty of them. So he thought a good idea would be to remove those cars with the army and then make a sculpture out of them. And his idea also, he's very different from me, but we share the same idea that art can change your life. Can definitely change the way you think. So he wanted to have special workshops for the local kids, just so that, because he reckoned they had plenty of sport going on there, plenty of sport facilities, but they didn't have enough art, and art is a lifeline of its own. So he got up early in the morning and went on their fitness excursions. But he also, as I say, had these workshops with the kids. So for him, the removal of the cars was the heart of the project. So we had this really amazing day where here we have a local Aboriginal elder smoking the cars, and then we pulled them out. We didn't get to use the army, unfortunately, which was sad because we couldn't use their helicopters, because you need helicopters to get, they're really in the river and it's a bit steep. But we used this magnificent tow truck company from Campbelltown. We often find in our projects we might start off with one partner and then we end up getting more supporters, because we work with the local community. There's a trust, there's networks. It's a good idea, for heaven's sake, and people, they come along for the ride with us. So it's just great fun. I was driving around in those tow trucks that day, and the maddest thing about this is, with a tow truck, I only learnt that day, all the mechanics for moving the cars is underneath. So to do what we were doing, which is like four-wheel driving with those vehicles, was very generous of tow truck companies, shall we say. So there we are, pulling out the cars. And then they all ended up in the outdoor studio. There's a bit of a leap, unfortunately, in these images, but you can see the vehicles. They were all pulled apart, got all the, the seats and the inside bits pulled out. For 7 weeks, he worked in that car park in Ayers. You know how hot it can get. This is February, and he's from New Zealand where it doesn't get so hot. They were getting up before sunrise to avoid the heat of the day. I said they had workshops. They did printmaking, and Michael Tuffrey can't help himself. He's just so endlessly creative. So there he is printing on the Visi vests they're the strings to the concrete anchor blocks. We always have, part of the organising is also making sure everything is safe. We do risk assessments for everything we do. Can you imagine the risk assessment we had to do for removing the cars? Mind-blowing. Thankfully, our partners in local government are always very good at the risk assessments, but we have to, everything we do is super safe. Workshops, kids at Ayers High School making prints. They went for 7 weeks. What was great about this is half of these kids in this program are the kids that don't go to school usually. The teachers have trouble getting them to school, but they came for these printmaking workshops. The other thing he did, I'm sure a lot of you are interested in DJing. He had DJing and VJing workshops every week for the kids and projection. So this is one practice night for the opening, just projecting on the screen shelters that we have on its side to see what it looked like. And then this was the very, very special opening day where local Aboriginal young men, Michael Tuffrey asked them to dance a kangaroo dance, and because the reason why he did the kangaroo, because there's kangaroos in that area, so it was as a symbol for that environment that is in too much of a fragile state right now. So we got the almost finished kangaroo, a beautiful kangaroo dance by local Aboriginal young men, and the prints printed in those little, like as safety bunting, again on those wires. It was a very special day. And then we moved it, and it was very funny. Like, of course, not everybody loves art. I always find that surprising. And when we first set up in that car park, people say, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, we're going to have an artist studio. He's going to make a sculpture." "We don't need art here. We need a skate ramp." "Oh," I didn't know what to say. I couldn't. But my colleague said, "Oh yes, a skate ramp is a very good idea, but art will be good too." Anyway, but over the 7 weeks, it went from people, thinking we were, I don't know, not thinking positive anyway, to really loving this whole project by the end. And by the end, when this was early one morning, people are saying, "Where you going, Rusty? See you, Rusty." And it just went up the road a little ways to Ayers High School. And there it is now permanently installed. And what I love, oh, there he is. What I love particularly is that in the front of that bonnet is a functioning barbecue. So it's good if art can have a purpose, a function. The purpose is the poetry and the metaphor and the expression and what it does for your heart and your soul. But it's good if it can have a utilitarian function as well.
I like that one too, that all the community did come along. Like, it was made a really empty shopping centre car park into a place where people just attracted like these to what was happening, and he did it really cleverly by having music. So on Monday nights they were playing music and you could hear it, and the kids or teenagers would come across all the different groups. Like African kids came up one day, and then the Islander kids came over, and everyone was coming to check out what was going on, and it kind of built up that sense of community. So the artists kind of brought people together in a way, or the artwork did. Totally.
Yeah. Like this kind of work is not for every artist, and I suspect that most of those people in the light show wouldn't come running for a job like these. Everybody's different, and all artists are different. But there's a whole lot of artists who like working with people. If we're going to get fancy, I'll just get fancy for 2 seconds and say, contemporary practice is dominated today by non-object-based practice and participatory practices. Participatory means working with people. So you often find artists who like that, who aren't precious about making a bronze sculpture or such, but who are interested in people, they like our projects. So which takes me to the final one, which you know a fair bit about already, isn't that so?
Mm. And so how many of you were at the camp? About 5 people. So in March we did an art workshop with some of the artists from this project, the Blacktown Native Institution project.
Okay, so you can butt in. I'm just going to tell it the way I tell it, because so this is a project about the Blacktown Native Institution, and for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all know about the appalling practice in our country of the stolen generation. I'm sure nobody needs that explained. But this is actually the site of the first Stolen Generation institution, but it's the second venue. In the 1820s, it was first in Parramatta, and then Governor Macquarie moved it to Blacktown. So, and it operated for 6 years in the 1820s. So we could talk forever even about the amazing history of that, but you can imagine what this site means to Aboriginal people, right? And because it was a school, there are records for the kids that were there. So people know, they know the names of who was there. They know they're the descendant of these people. The appalling, just another instance of the racism in our country. Appallingly, the first year that they were here, they had school for everybody. That proper school, not just, how to learn to wash clothes and, be Christian. Learning English and maths. And of course, well, guess what? A girl from this school, Maria Locke, topped the colony. So there she is, with English not as her first language, coming in and beating all the other white kids in the colony. So that was the end of the serious education after that. There was, more to the menial tasks. So can you imagine, I get upset and imagine how you would feel if you're a descendant of Maria Locke. Now, it looks, it's a very ordinary piece of land. That dark line that runs through it was once a creek. Imagine it as beautiful bush, as the beautiful Cumberland plain of that area. And imagine that as a running creek with bulrushes and eel running through it, because that's how it was. So for the local Aboriginal people, this is a place of great agony, because it's such a symbol of that bad thing that's happened, of that thing that's happened in our country that's a part of their history, and of the particular residents of that place as well. And just how our partners, as I say, Blacktown Council and the state government, they both own this land. And they want to give this land a more appropriate purpose, but no one has enough money, and there's all these practical reasons. So we are in there, C3 West, we are nothing if not idealistic, and we are trying to work on getting an appropriate future permanent use of the site. And we were also working on, we've made, I'll show you in a minute, but to make artworks, at least temporary, which honour and acknowledge that history. So if you come along to the corroboree on Saturday the 27th of June, you'll see Carla Dickens has an artwork I'll show you a bit later, which honours the children who are in the institution. Christine and Stephen, they're weavers, and they're making eel traps. So you can imagine what that means for the first people. If I'm telling you there were eels in that water, and that tradition of weaving those eel traps isn't so strong anymore in that local community. So the local Aboriginal people are so happy to be getting those eel traps. And Leanne Tobin is making an artwork on that Rooty Hill Road site. A beautiful thing of cutouts of little, paper chain dolls, boys and girls, but printed with the rules of the institution. So that's going to be on that fence. And I told you about Carla's also doing that other artwork inside the fence that I told you about, the stars of the sky that the children would have seen. And Darren's going to be projecting images. Darren's been projecting images of the community and people who have attended the camps. So that's Darren with Leanne Tobin and her mum. He's just taken a photo of them. Carla and Leanne did a beautiful tree planting in the first camp. In their little bed frames you can see, so again a reference to the children, but the plants they used included the Waratah. The Waratahs, interestingly, it's emerged that the Waratah for the Darug people was a symbol of friendship. Like you would extend it to a non-Darug if they were good people, and so that's a local Darug use of the Waratah. But Carla, who's actually Wiradjuri, from the Aboriginal culture that she knows, it's part of a mourning and grieving, so it's been a very important symbol for us throughout this thing. That's Steve, weaving. Weaving is an interesting art form. I talked earlier about just generally I find art equals safe, And what's interesting about weaving is weaving equals, a lot of the time, feeling safe and talking. And we've found through these sessions that there's been a lot more sharing because of the safeness of and weaving also slows you down. So it's been really interesting to understand how that particular medium can function. We've also, I said, we're trying really hard to get a better future for this site, and we've had discussions. This is a wonderful man, Michael McDaniel, and he's an expert on a whole lot of things to do with Aboriginal project management. He's done a really important work on native title, and luckily for the MCA, he's on our Indigenous Advisory Board. So he was talking about how you get the land back in your own ownership. And we have entertainment. We can't be, it's a bit serious and sad, so we can't, but there's also always happiness in every story. And this is an Aboriginal lady, Chris Burke, and she has these puppets on, they're called Yarramundi Kids, and you can watch them on NITV, National Indigenous Television. And that puppet there is her puppet for Maria Locke, the girl I mentioned, the clever girl, who then actually, look her up, she's amazing. She got land grants for her husband and all sorts of stuff. And her language name is Bulungaya. Koori Radio is a media partner. We had a bit of, we've had wonderful support from them. We've made a website, which is a keeping place of all the stories associated with the site, and that's been you should, maybe we can check that out later, but it's gathering together all the stories. There's some of the work that Kara's been doing is on there. It's in the interim, while they can't have their own physical building, like a digital keeping place is a very powerful thing. It's the first time there's been a painted up Darug man doing ceremony on that piece of country for longer than people can remember. That's Uncle Lex, and that's Lily talking about this. I find with First Nation people, they have very spiritual understanding often of when it rains. Like it can mean, it's a serious acknowledgement of what's going down. So that was Lily talking about the rain and what it meant there. And I told you Darren been taking photos of the community and of the people that came to the camps, and now I find that Aboriginal people, particularly given the hard time a lot of my countrymen have given them, they're so inclusive, and we're all part of the team. And doesn't Kara take a fabulous photo?
I look a bit exhausted.
I think you look amazing. And yeah, there's been lots of ceremony, art. Art includes performance for Aboriginal people and other First Nation peoples. That performance has a very deep cultural meaning. It's here she's talking about kind of not only reinvigorating this sad piece of country, but also reinvigorating cultural tradition and a fresh start for the Darug and for the descendants of the Blacktown Native Institute. This is the work I was referring to earlier, and you've had something to do with that, haven't you? These people? No, different ones. No. So here's Carla. The second word is going to be memory, so it doesn't take any explaining what that's about. But if you come along to corroboree, we're going to have a pyrotechnic version of this, because when the sun goes down, we've spent $2,200 on a pyrotechnician who's it's going to all burn slowly for about 3 minutes. So there'll be this great moment of loving memory in flames. That's more of us talking. That's Carla giving an artist talk. In fact, interestingly, what she's talking about here is the power of art that is made in response to a place. And you can see that's a recurring thing in these C3 West projects. And it's just as powerful and relevant just to make beautiful standalone works like in the light show that you now like. Find a place with but also it doesn't say what it is. So it's a place of such historical importance, but nothing more great entertainment. Bring your family. There'll be something for everyone, I promise. hot chocolate, campfire, barbecue. So that concludes my story.
Do you have any comments on, because Plumpton High School is just around the corner. It's the reason why we did workshop and invited you to come and make art with the artists, like Leanne Tobin, who you saw there walking in the spiral, and the Weavers, Stephen and Christine, is because your school is right there. It's in walking distance from this site. Do any of you have any sort of reflections maybe, or questions, or comments around the corner from you, or things you might have learnt from being in the art workshop and working with the artists?
Yeah, it's interesting how like all this history, how we live like just around the corner from it. Majority of us have no idea about that. The history behind that area in our area that we live in. A lot of us don't know about it. So it's good to have these programs because it gives you more background of what's in our area. So that's just a comment I thought.
Yeah, it's a really good comment.
How many of you knew, like for example, that Yarramundi or Bungarraby, the fact that those connect to local Aboriginal history? No? Yeah, so there's a lot of, often in language and in the places around us, there's a lot of stories underneath some of those names too.
And it sort of goes back for me to that point about Lara, about the way you see things, art and the way you see things. And for me, because this is also about, we're talking about Blacktown Native Institution, it's also about history, and that is why people have jobs. Because history has to be rewritten. Because it's too often coordinators. And that's why. Thank you all.
Thanks, Plumpton High.
Thank
Yeah.
you.